achieve gender equality, ensure the rule of law, promote justice, and promote non-discrimination. These are the fancy words that they're using. And in reality, the deeper you go into this agenda and to the Sustainable Development Goals, the more you realize that there's a plan here that aspires to kind of absolute control over humanity, while it's eliminating the individual and the individual's rights.
Right. So, Efrat, why do you want to work at this company?
Here we go again. Yeah.
You look so formal.
What are your advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah. Why do you find the Free Cities Foundation a good employer? I tell you what.
Thank God I don't have to do these anymore.
I've never done one.
Never.
No. The only time I've ever had to sort of sell myself was when I was a photographer on Fleet Street. The first few times you try and get a job, you basically take a portfolio to a picture editor, and they look through it. You don't have to, you don't have to say who you are or whatever,
Easy.
And then beyond that, people come to you and give you jobs. Like, there's once you're good at what you do, you don't have to pitch for a job.
That's that was my tactic, but it wasn't easy.
Well, at marketing's, I suppose it's harder to show how good you are very, very quickly. Whereas in photography and film, if you knock out a cracking film, people go, I want that guy. And also people that employ creatives, they're so short-sighted. If they see a film they like, they just say, I want that guy to make that film for us,
exactly.
And it's really simple. Yeah. But with marketing, it's like, God, what are the metrics?
So I worked hard at showing it, and it worked, but I tried to then teach people how to do it. It wasn't easy.
Oh yeah. Can you teach that? I mean, a good marketer, you can.
Well, you can teach people how to do personal branding, but it takes...
You mean for themselves?
Yeah.
Go on then.
Because that's how I started, with not wanting to do another interview in my life.
Right, before we get into all this shit then, what am I doing wrong with my personal brand? What is my personal brand first?
I don't know what your personal brand is.
You've met me before.
I have, but I haven't gone deep. But your personal brand needs to be such that when people talk about you and you're not there, they're presenting you to each other in a way that you would like them to present you. That you manage to influence their perception and make it so memorable so they can tell one another, oh, Timothy, that guy who does blah, blah, blah. And that will be fitting with what you expect. And to get there, you need to do a lot of preliminary work in, first of all, digesting and identifying, distilling that yourself. What is my positioning? What do I want people to say about me? So I do a lot of work to help people, create their brand identity.
Do you know what's funny? This morning, do you know Mikkel Thorup? He's the expat money show guy.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
He's going to be with me on the panel,
right.
I think.
I was supposed to have a pod with him this morning, but his flight's delayed 14 hours, so he didn't come. And I was like, oh shit, I've got no one to, I don't want to waste any time here. So I just put a message out on the group chat, said, look, to the speakers, anyone want to come? And this guy came, who I'd kind of overlooked a little bit on, I've even forgotten his name, how embarrassing, wait a minute. Come on. I've cut that page out, I know I'd have. Is that Alex? That's his name. Alex Martinov, local guy. He's a Czech guy. He's a leadership coach, is what he calls himself. And we had a phenomenal conversation. Basically, I basically had a consultation
session.
for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
And
great.
it was good. It was good, but it was really beautiful because it was a last minute thing. I knew nothing about him. I didn't have any notes. I just
You just winged it.
Yeah, but it was good because I think a lot of creatives don't understand that side of things. And I think I'm a good example because I've never leveraged myself. Never. Like, I've had agents leverage me. I've had, but I've got no interest in leveraging myself. So
it's the hardest thing
when
to
you
do.
work on your own, then like now, like someone else doing what I'm doing now would have already they would have borrowed some money, got some employees, got some cameras, got some, That probably would have happened. That's not in my nature. I'm just like, this is good. Let's just tick over. This is nice, you know.
And you could claim that you and I come from the same starting point, because I was no one in this industry also before, but I came with a lot of skills and knowing how to brand myself and knowing how to position myself. And this is me a year and a half later with like a podcast that is blowing up with about 3 million views so far. And I have a donor who is like, he's an investor. He's not even a sponsor. He doesn't want anything from me. He's like, I just want you to continue doing what you're doing. I'm going to fund you.
Did that come after?
And this is all positioning. This is all, and it's not that my brand is something fake. It is me, but that's the ultimate way. You want to reach a place where what you speak and what you do is really aligned with who you are. You're not faking, you're not putting on a facade of something you're not, but you actually know yourself so well, and you've done enough work to be able to then convey who you are and what you do and what your mission is and what you want in such a way that you're not even thinking twice, and it resonates so well with the audience that those opportunities just come.
But you are a good marketer as well. I tell you why I know that, because prior to the time I interviewed you, we never had anyone come to us asking, "Where's the content? Do you know, like we just put stuff out, you know."
Right, and here I am. It's like, guys, give me the content. I want to leverage.
And you put it out, and I used it. I leveraged it to show the others. Look, someone's just getting lots of views on our stuff here. And our guy's not even making it.
Yes, and to be honest with you, I could have had so much more. I think that our conversation was phenomenal. I listened to it again very quickly before this, and I realized that we were both, like, we were on a zone. Page, you know what I mean? We were doing so well. So if we had video, or if we would have repurposed that content to more content forms, we could even squeeze it more. Even now, it's not too late.
Did you? Well, you can have.
I made an article out of it. I used the shorts, but there's more that we can do.
But you didn't make any of your own shorts. Do you use
No, I
shorts?
didn't.
You can have it. You can do whatever you want.
I know I can, but I don't. First of all, I don't have the video, the whole video.
No, but I can give you that. That's not a problem. Obviously, you can have that. I videoed you constantly. I just didn't video myself because I only had one camera.
Yeah. I could. I mean, I do that with my own content.
Yes.
So,
but if you ever want to, obviously you can have it, because it exists. It's an MP4 or whatever.
And that's the kind of engagement you want to create also with your guests. You want to make sure that after every episode, when you send them the episode, you also send them shorts, or you send them transcript, or you send them the MP3, and you encourage them to put it on their blog and put it on social media and follow up. And that's what a marketeer does.
Do you know what I've noticed though, and you probably can do this a lot better than me? Our biggest guests don't share the content. They don't.
I know.
Is that so? That's not just us. That's just them, right?
Them.
So what's that all about then? Like,
they're too cool for school.
Is that it? Or is it that they feel like if they share that kind of content, it's too self-aggrandizing? Is it?
Well, some of them may feel like it's too, like it's too cocky. Some of them, but most of them, it's not about that. With most of them, it's just they're too cool. They have, other things more important that look better, whatever. They may, if it was a video, they may have shared. No? You
more
tried
often than
video?
not, no. You might get a like, but I mean, there's a couple of people that are very well followed, like millions.
And they wouldn't.
Well, yeah, but I don't know, because I always think that on our podcast, you're coming here to share your message.
Yeah.
And you get a high quality version of it, hopefully. So why not share it? It doesn't matter how many,
Look, as much as it annoys me to say it, because it's a lot of work, the number one thing that works with people sharing is to create clips. And if you create it for them, you digest it and you give it to them, like feed them, they will do it. Yeah. If you give them the whole thing and now I have to work and maybe...
No, we give clips. Anyway, I've been re-energized recently, and I've realized that, do you know what? This came from my conversation this morning. Once again, you probably know all this shit, but I just want to...
No, take.
This guy, the coach, the life coach, he said, The first thing that most people don't ask themselves or can't answer themselves is, what do you actually want? What do you actually want?
Right. That's right.
No, even worse. What do you actually want? And I've always thought, oh, look at that, my mum's calling. Ridiculous. I've had to leave that phone on because I'm monitoring you on a little monitor down there. But no, I'm just like, Mum, what the hell is going on?
You're reminding me to put that on out of office.
I've turned it all down, but it did show up briefly. He said, so, you know.
What do you want?
Yeah, but I've always thought I'm pretty good at knowing what I want, right? But then I thought about it and I said to him, okay, I'm going to do that. And the truth is, I was underselling myself because do you know what I really want? Which is what I told you before we went on air. I want to do
Work
a podcast full time with staff, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I noticed that even, because that's quite unreasonable want.
So you're not even.
So I didn't even entertain it.
Yeah,
and now it's front and center.
That's right.
It's
great.
there.
Wonderful.
I know, but it took a guy to sit on the opposite side of the table
Sometimes
and
it's
remind
like
me
that.
something so ridiculous.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah, be compassionate with yourself. We can teach people stuff and then we forget about ourselves.
Anyway, look.
Well, you get that. You can get that.
Yes, but I'm just annoyed that I forgot or whatever. Anyway, look. So, like I say, we had a phenomenally good chat last time just about CBDCs. So we don't need to go there this time. And actually, when I sent you a message saying, what do you want to talk about? You said, you gave me a few options. I'm going to run through them now because they're quite interesting. Going cashless is one. Stable coins is another, which I do want to talk about that because I don't know how that fits into everything. But the last thing you said was, check out this interview I'd done. I think it was with Walker. Was it?
Right.
See if there's anything on there you like. And I just said everything. And it's basically Agenda 2030, food, farming, information, tech, education, everything, right? So I would like to talk to that. I fully appreciate that that's not something you can be an expert in everything.
Correct.
But what is interesting is that this idea that, 2030, something's happening. There is and I don't take this the wrong way, but there is a conspiracy. There is an actual conspiracy. Because I know that, most people will talk about it. As soon as the word conspiracy comes up, it's a really powerful tool to sort of so I do want to talk about it, but I just want to preface anyone that's listening. Yeah, all right, we get it. It might be a conspiracy. Just forget that. It's not, listen to the
Today we're talking about the actual stuff, the stuff that is out there for everyone to see and then make up their own minds about it.
Why don't we let's start on something easy then. Why the hell would we want to talk about stable coins? What's that? How does that?
It actually ties in really well with the CBDC topic, but you didn't want to go there. But I can say in one word. I can say very, very shortly. So stable coins could be what we call the red herring. They could be the thing that will come about in many countries in case, and this is my theory, in case the resistance to CBDC will be very big. People will start resisting it. People will start understanding how hard it is, how tough it is, and how bad it is for them. They'll start revolting, and the governments will then say, you know what, we've listened to you. We're not going to go ahead with CBDCs, just like Canada for now. They are shelving their CBDC plan for now. And then what they can do is they can issue stable coins that are national, official of the state, or authorize the commercial banks to issue such stable coins. For example, in Australia, they have 3 or 4 different types of stable coins that they've been experimenting with lately, both by commercial banks and the government. And Israel has one coming up. Nigeria has one coming up. So you can start seeing that trend in various countries. And then you ask yourself, okay, but why do you need to create that technology and that solution if you have CBDC that you're working on? And so they're doing both. And my guess is that whenever they're going to see that this is too much, and the US is the best example for it, they're going to say, okay, we don't have CBDC anymore. Don't worry. This is exactly what Trump did now. Trump said in Nashville, but also in other scenarios, he said, not on my watch. We're not going to have CBDCs. And everyone's like, yeah, Rootney. And then he said, But I am working on an official stable coin, putting that under legislation in the US. And this is true. The Republican Party is now working on creating bills to legalize stablecoins, official stablecoins by the state. And if that's the trajectory that, that if Trump gets elected and they're not going to have CBDCs, they may turn around and say, we've listened to you, no CBDCs, don't worry, but we have this great stable coin that you can use. Tether is also doing already a good job in helping the US government without they don't want to, but that's kind of what the US government is using them for. But that's a private company. They may actually decide to do an official American one, or authorize, let's say, JP Morgan or Chase or all these banks to issue their own tokenized stable coins and then start handing them out to their customers. And they're exactly the same in terms of programmability. So they're exactly the same as CBDCs. They just pegged 1-to-1 to the dollar. So there's not much difference in the utilization of them between CBDC and stable coins, depending on what they're used for. So it's a trend that we need to be paying attention to.
Tether, correct me if I'm wrong though, Tether isn't programmable yet, is it? Or is it?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't want to say because I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that Tether and Circle, both being dollar-pegged stablecoins, are acting as a lifeline today in a lot of emerging markets. It is if that product called stablecoin, by Tether at least, has found its product market fit. And in emerging countries, it's a lifeline. People use it as their only currency that they can trade in, they can actually live with, which is good on the one hand. On the other hand, the US is saying, without being confused at all, we're going to use this to continue inflating the dollar and continue to print more money, because Tether is in the top 10 countries. It's not a country, it's a company, but they're in the top 10 entities buying bonds from the US to then increase the size of the US debt. So it's like a good and a bad. It's a yin-yang kind of thing. And Tether is a big Bitcoin company. It's great for Bitcoin on one hand. On the other hand, it's bad for fiat, They back
Tether with treasuries, did you say? Is that
Tether is buying the treasuries in order to hold debt, which is their reserve. They have to hold a US dollar reserve in order to issue their stable coins.
I see what you mean. Yeah, you're right. And also, from a PR perspective, stablecoins they're getting really liked now because of the kind of use in.
They're programmable. They can be,
No, but sure. In the even amongst Bitcoiners, there was a time when it's like stablecoins are other blockchains.
But I think you need to distinguish. Even between Bitcoiners, I see very different reactions to Tether than to everyone else, because Tether is a Bitcoin company, and they get their fiat, they make their revenues, and then they turn it into Bitcoin treasuries for themselves. So they invest back in the Bitcoin ecosystem, whereas companies like Circle are known at not being so good for the industry. And so, and again, I'm not the expert there, but I think Tether is a different creature than everyone else. So it's a funny, weird animal, Tether. And
you think it's a Trojan horse?
I think it's definitely something we need to just pay attention to, because it can go in many ways. And it's definitely, Tether are Bitcoiners, and they really help the industry. So it's a funny situation,
Well, and like you say, even Trump saying, not on my watch. It's only 4 years. I don't think anyone cares, really. I don't think even people that want CBDCs care that if they wait 4 years. Who's coming in next? God only knows,
Sure.
Wow. Okay, right.
Okay, so that was the reason why I said stablecoins is interesting.
Tick. Okay. Yeah. But they're all part of a bigger picture. I called it the macro view.
Yeah.
And it all seems to be coinciding on 2030. Am I getting that right?
You're getting it right, because that's what the people up there said that they want to do. They want to create a plan which is called Agenda 2030, or the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. That's the full name. It's a long name, created by the UN back in 2015. It was signed by 193 countries that all signed this, how do you call it, treaty, document, agenda, basically. And they all said that they're complying with this big agenda. This big agenda is like a big plan. And it's made up of 17 SDGs. SDGs stand for Sustainable Development Goals. All right.
God,
so there are 17 areas or topics. Basically, it's supposed to cover all of life. So I'll just give you the official definition of it. It's a global framework for international cooperation to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all.
It sounds so amazing.
You have the music.
It's amazing. I want it. I want all that.
Right. Me too. Me too. And the 2030 Agenda is a roadmap for the world to end poverty, protect the planet, address inequalities, promote human rights, which is bullshit because there's nothing about human rights in the agenda, achieve gender equality, ensure the rule of law, promote justice, and promote non-discrimination. These are the fancy words that they're using. And in reality, the deeper you go into this agenda, and to the Sustainable Development Goals, the more you realize that there's a plan here that aspires to kind of absolute control over humanity, while it's eliminating the individual and the individual's rights. And here too, there is a cynical exploitation of goals that benefit the world, but they benefit the rich or the powerful or the corporation and not really the citizens. And you have to really dig deep in order to see these things. In fact, there's not even one out of the 17 goals that talks about human rights. It's like weaved into some of the 17 topics, but there is not even one goal about protecting human rights. There's 17 goals about many things, like food, agriculture, natural resources, climate, environment. Climate and environment are like the mega topic over this whole Agenda 2030. Money and CBDC, health. We've all heard about the WHO, the World Health Organization's One Health agenda, which is part of this. Social agenda, so diversity and inclusion is all over the place, gender, equality, education, cities, urban, right? 15-minute cities, transportation, governance, all these, it's like all of life is defined in this huge, big agenda. And whomever want to check me, go to the UN website. There is an actual website for the Agenda 2030. It's like, I think it's sdg.un.com or something like that. And you can read, it will take you ages to read through this because it's very heavy. But basically, what's important to know, if I went to the origins of this agenda. So, as I said, it was signed in 2015 in New York, but it's based on a previous agenda called Agenda 21, which stands for the 21st century. It's not 2021, it's the 21st century, yeah. And that was signed in 1992 by 178 countries in the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro.
That was an environmental thing, I remember. Yeah.
It's the same. So the Agenda 2030, you'll find it in their documentation. It's based on Agenda 21. It's basically what it is just a sophistication, articulation, and maybe even a more granular plan now to actually implement Agenda 21st or 21. Agenda 21 was quite broad. It didn't go down to the implementation phase. It talked more broadly about those topics, but Agenda 2030 actually has the 17 goals, and it actually talks about how we are going to bring that into our daily lives. And that's why when you look at Agenda 2030, you can view it as a tool to, we cannot say enforce, because of course they're not enforcing, they're completely friendly, the UN. They are encouraging the 193 countries that have signed it to start embedding or complementing their local plans in each country to that big agenda. So what you see right now in the world, you know how we see people like us that already have that ability to identify that things go wrong. We see that all of a sudden, all these countries are talking about mis and disinformation laws at the same time. And all of a sudden, there's climate rules coming out at the same time, more or less. Health issues, same time, all around the world. When was the last time? I mean, I'm only 44, but I don't remember that things happened on a political, domestic level in my country, and then they also happened in so many other places in parallel, more or less in a span of a few months from each other. That is very unique and bizarre to the last few years. And the reason why you see it right now is because we're very close to 2030. We're in 2024, and all these governments are being requested by the global organizations to put the, how do you say, the metal, the metal on the pedal, the pedal on the metal,
yes.
and start pushing, because they need to implement those plans. They need to put it as part of daily lives. That's why you see carbon taxes, and you see misinformation rules and censorship rules, and you see everything being enacted. They cannot hide it anymore. It's not a big fluffy plan anymore. Now it's rolled out into countries, and you see people like Klaus Schwab sitting there in the World Economic Forum, who is a partner of the UN, of course, saying we've infiltrated into cabinets. Now we have people, because the people at the WEF are our politicians, chosen public officials. They go and get educated on how to actually collaborate with private companies. It's the public-private partnership model, which is fascism, really. How to collaborate in order to execute and implement all these plans in their countries. So there is, it sounds like I'm creating a picture of a, conspiracy over there, but that is what is happening. And you can go check, you can go spend time on the WEF website or the UN's website. You'll find documentation that will blow your head off. And I will give some examples as we continue in this conversation, which I've prepared, because this is all for everyone to see. This is not hidden anymore. Now you can read everything, and you can then be the judge of what do you think about it. Do you think that they're really meaning some good? They have good intentions. They want the best for the planet and the environment and the climate and for us? Or is there something behind this? And I think that it's a grim picture that is being drawn at the moment.
Well, before we get to the grim picture, let's take a few of them on individual merits first. Because, I mean, to be honest, the question I'm most fascinated by is why this, why now, like who, what. But I just want to pick on one because it's close to my heart. It's farming and sort of food and farming. Now,
I have a friend who says whenever someone asks him why and who is it, he says, do you think the chicken cares who's going to make a chicken sandwich out of it? Or the sheep cares who's going to put it on a plate as lamb chops? They don't, someone's doing it to them. And does it matter who it is? Like, that's the situation.
I suppose it matters for me.
It matters for people. I'm not disrespecting it. And it mattered for me as well. And I did some research and found, some ties.
I tell you why it matters for me, because I'm trying to, a lot of this for me is trying to understand why. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I could quite easily say, right, there are a group, I know some quite rich people, and they're different. They live in this different world to us, right? And I could imagine that there are groups of people that get together who do think about the whole world, not like you and me just thinking about where we're going out for dinner tonight. They're thinking about the world in a long term. And you could even say that what they're trying to do is just kind of like, it's like damage limitation. We're entering this world. The internet is just blowing everything wide open. People are like all around the world going, oh my God, I know all this stuff now. I can do all this stuff. And the people in charge partly are thinking, well, we want to obviously protect ourselves, but maybe we just don't want all this crap to just get completely out of control I don't know. I mean, you know.
So first of all, I think that those people that you're referring to, first of all, they exist. Whenever people tell me, no, there is no such thing, I totally disagree. There are such people, and I know some of them. I mean, I've worked with some of them. I've seen some of them and how they operate. It exists, and you can also do your research, and I will direct the audience to go and check out journalists that are doing far greater work than me on that topic, like Whitney Webb or James Corbett, Derek Brose, people that are really researching those organizations and those people for many, many years. The Bilderberg Group, the Club of Rome, there are many organizations that's all they do. They sit behind closed doors and talk about the future of the universe and Earth and where we're going to go in the future and how we can guide this ship, because they do see themselves as not the rulers, but the leaders of this world, even if no one appointed them. And they have this mission to carry forward, and they need to design that future that we are heading towards. And unfortunately, a lot of the things you learn when you research about them is that they actually do think that they know better than us, than everyone else, what's good for us, and that they treat a lot of us like useless eaters. They don't necessarily care about humanity. They care about numbers, they care about money, they care about power and control. And I think control is one of the biggest things that they care about. They want to stay in power, and in order to stay in power, they have to have control. And in a world where the internet has opened up borders and has opened up limitations to information, to communication, etc., they are losing control. It's like two trends that are opposite each other. Like they want greater control, and here we have a more technological and a more open society with the internet forces and with communications and the advent of technology that is allowing us to get faster and closer to each other and to exchange information and money, etc. And they're understanding that they're losing control. So with that trajectory, they want to strengthen their control. In parallel to that, you and I both know, coming from Bitcoin and money, that some of those really rich people are also trying to control humanity through fiat, through the fiat system and money. And just by virtue of exercising such a system, they are making people weaker and more dependent, and without them knowing that that's what's happening. Just by virtue of having inflation, they're debasing their currencies, and they're making people more and more enslaved into that matrix system that we live in. And most people are not aware of that. So they have that running all the time in the background. It's happening. This is like the oxygen that they live on. And then in parallel to that, they have to exercise more control on that matrix, because that matrix has some holes, like Bitcoin and internet and decentralized technologies, and things are starting to happen that they don't like. So they have to then put more control. And so a really great lady to follow in that respect is Catherine Austin Fitts, who comes from that world and talks about the power structure up high there, and how they're designing or building those systems in really high up positions. And they're trying to make sure that the different silos that they're putting in place, for example, the silo of money and the silo of education and the silo of, let's say, food and farming and all that, they're not related to each other, so that you as a little citizen will not see the connection between those silos, and you'll see things happening in different areas of your life, and you'll say, oh, okay, but this is just a small change in the money system. It's not related to health. It's not related to climate. You know what I mean? But in fact, they're all connected, because they're all part of bigger plans that most people are not aware of. And then when we bring them to life, people call us names and think that we're conspiracy theorists, but really we're describing those plans and what they have in store for us, because you don't want to think and admit that someone is really conspiring to put more control over you. In fact, you think that someone up there that you have elected, maybe the first layer you've elected, you don't think about the other ones, you think that they are working for you. and not against you. So that is a rug pull, and that's hard for people to accept. So with the who is it? It's a whole rabbit hole to go to, and other people are doing it better than me, and I don't want to go there because I don't have enough information, but I do have a lot of information about what it is that they want to do.
Well, when it comes to the who as well, I think part of the reason why the who is so fascinating for me is because I want to know why someone wants to do this. Like, I get it.
And the control
there are psychopaths in this world.
Yes.
I just don't. It's hard to believe that they're psychopaths, isn't it? It's hard to think. Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you the other thing. Yeah, they're psychopaths, but also most of them are not psychopaths. They're just either blackmailed into following along, or they're just compliant sheeps. They'll just follow along, follow orders. So most people, it was just like in COVID. We saw it actually happening, where you had a small group of people up the top making decisions, the World Health Organizations, the Bill Gates, whatever, the prime ministers or presidents of countries. And then you had everyone else. You had doctors just complying. You had, nurses and caregivers and just random people in the street calling you for not wearing a mask. Everyone becomes then an agent of the matrix. And they're so terrified by you breaking out of the matrix that they will do everything in their power to try and sustain this system that they know so well. Because if they get outside of the sandbox, they will suffer consequences. They will suffer outcasting and ridiculing and shaming, things that I was willing to take because I consciously and explicitly said what I will not allow people to do to me, and what I do with my life and with my body. And most people are not willing to pay that price and to do that. And so people are so afraid to even entertain that idea of stepping out of the sandbox that they will guard it with their lives. They will go after you as if you were the biggest enemy of the state in order to comply and stay welcome and belong to a group.
But I mean, you're touching upon an interesting point there, though, because I agree that's kind of the majority of people. So what does all this stuff matter then? Like, what was sheep are going to sheep?
I don't know. This is a Free Cities Foundation, right? It matters for people to be free. It matters for you to live in a place where you can actually do things that are good for you, that you choose, rather than someone else dictating every little step in your life. And the Agenda 2030 and everything that's in it is supposed to dictate everything for you, from where you go, how much you spend, what you consume, how you behave in the classroom, how you handle the environment. They will tell you everything you need to know, everything you need to do in life. And for people who care about freedom, they should care about Agenda 2030 because it's going to heavily influence their lives. And if they are lucky enough to have the means and whatever it takes, I don't know, the balls to then leave where they are actually residing and go and live in a free community or a free city, then they can try and minimize as much as they can the interface with the institutions and with this horrible agenda that will haunt us for the next few years. And I think that once you are aware, once you know, you have the power to actually navigate your life from a place of strength rather than a place of, of influence. When you don't know and things happen, first of all, everything seems random. It seems like, oh, now this has happened. And then you become very reactive. What do I do now? This happened. What do I do? Whereas if you know, you can anticipate and you can prepare and you can be smarter when things actually hit the fan. And you can then navigate your life either in advance to the shit that is happening, or you can be prepared for the right reaction when it actually comes. And hopefully many of the things that they are planning will not come about, will not be fulfilled, but it looks like a lot of it is fulfilled. So it's already being fulfilled, or at least the infrastructure is there.
But I mean, isn't it possibly a case that the average person hasn't been pushed far enough to respond yet?
100%. You know, one of their slogans for this whole Agenda 2030 is Build Back Better. And it's on the, if you type Build Back Better on the World Economic Forum website or the UN website, you will find shitloads of articles and videos. And I have a great compilation video of 2 minutes with all the politicians all around the world saying Build Back Better when COVID started. But let's stop to think about it for a second. In order to build something, what do you need? You first need to ruin something. You need destruction. You can't build on something that's already working and is okay, right? You build on a void. You build on destruction. So if their slogan is Build Back Better, then we need to see a lot of destruction and a lot of ruins in the next few years. And we've already started seeing it in COVID. And I am living through another one of those hells at the moment where I live in Israel. And I'm seeing every day when I wake up and look around me, I see how they are destroying my country and my neighbors' countries. They are literally ruining everything so that they can build back better. And they're bringing big contractors to Israel and to Gaza to see the ruins so that they can start discussing the future contracts for building, just like in Ukraine. BlackRock is coming to Ukraine with the big money to see where they're going to do big new housing projects. It's the same in Israel and Gaza now. There is a new area, I mean, it's the same area in Israel that is surrounding the Gaza Strip that has been completely destroyed on October 7th. And they didn't bother to rehabilitate it yet. And they gave it a name, a brand name. They put a bill in place in order to rehabilitate that area. They're pushing a lot of new fiscal policies into that area in order to build back better. They're inviting Elon Musk to come to Israel and they give him a tour of that area. They call it the Resurrection Island. That's the name of the like in Hebrew, like Tkuma, Hevel Tkuma is like the resurrection area. It's crazy. And Elon Musk is coming and he's seeing the planet and talking about green building and sustainable and climate and all that bullshit. And this is all in line with the agenda, with Agenda 2030. And people who see it and they don't know Agenda 2030, they look at it and they go, oh, great, they're just reacting to, a massacre that happened or the war. They're just reacting, so they're trying to now help and cover it, but they're not. They needed this destruction in order to print more money, in order to bring the contracts, in order to rebuild Gaza, to rebuild Israel. I am under the opinion that the whole October 7th was enabled in order to go and build in Gaza again and reoccupy that land. So I mean, I'm seeing it every day, and, you can call me whatever name you want. I don't really care, but I've been called all names already. But I just see how they need to ruin things in order to rebuild.
That's a very astute observation. I've known about Build Back Better for a long time, but now you frame it like that. You're right. You need to destroy it first before you can build it back. What
was COVID? COVID was ruining our health in order to build some habits back onto us. They're like, okay, there's a virus. Let's just even agree that there was a pandemic, and there wasn't. But let's just say, even if there was a pandemic, now what we are ruining, what we're destroying here is your faith in your body and your faith in other people, your trust in other people. You have to be alarmed now, and now you have to get used to this new way of living. You have to be at home. They've destroyed all these beliefs and habits and trust that we have in order to put in place really strict measures. And now with climate, they are building on it. There is an actual article, again, on the World Economic Forum website called Our world is transforming, big community trends for sustainable cities. And it actually is quoting the extreme measures that were enabled during COVID. Now they're a stepping stone for what's happening with the climate agenda. They say because people showed us that we can do all these things during COVID, we're now building on that because they've ruined our trust, they've ruined our habits, and now they're building something new with those strict measures in place. They're telling us, you're going to be taxed on your carbon, and people are not making a peep about it. They're just accepting it. And it's also great. I mean, there's a lot of psychology behind how they roll it out. But they are just making us more and more used to compromising our human rights, giving away our rights and receiving back privileges instead. Yeah, there's a lot of destruction in order to build.
It's creepy, man.
I'm sorry.
No. I mean, look, I know. I've just got a quick question, actually. This is this only needs a very short tangent. I want to stay on track. But you mentioned you were talking about Elon going to Gaza Strip and stuff. I thought Elon was on our side.
Yeah, so that's the thing with Elon. I think a little bit like Tether. He's like a bit on both sides because I just watch what he's doing instead of what he's saying. He's saying all the right things, right? But Elon first of all, he's a government contractor in the US, one of the biggest ones. So he works with the government. Secondly, if you come to Israel to see the ruins because you're going to make some deals, let's just say, not because you come to make some deals, because you actually care and you want to visit, why don't you go and visit in Gaza as well and see the destruction there? Why did you come just to Israel? And then when you went back, you only rooted for Israel. And then all these people that are listening to me now go, is she Israeli? She's hating Israel? No, I don't hate Israel. Obviously, I love my home and my family and friends, but I'm critical. And if this guy is balanced and all he wants is to help humanity, then he should look at everyone that's suffering and not just one side, or not just root for one side. And it's really funny that it becomes really good friends with Benjamin Netanyahu and does fireside chats with him on stage for various reasons. And Elon is also developing, some chips to go in your brain, and I don't really care how people will justify that.
The Everything app.
The Everything app on Twitter. There you go. So yeah, he's providing a lot more free space for free speech on his platform. That's correct. But he still has that vision of creating the Everything app, turning Twitter into the WeChat of the West, right? If WeChat has total control over your consumption, over your money, over your communication, etc., it's one app to manage your life and you're relying on it. And when someone switches it off for you, you're fucked. It's the same with how he wants to what he wants to do with Twitter. And you had Ben Ark with Noster here. I listened to your episode with him. It was a great one. So I encourage people to go and check out the decentralized alternatives that are out there. And I'm on Twitter and I'm big on Twitter, and, I appreciate what he's doing for free speech, but it's hard to say that Elon is only on our side.
It doesn't matter if Elon's a good guy or not. What matters is the protocol, and is it decentralized? Because if it's not, it's like, Elon's going to die one day.
It's a neck to choke, right?
Yeah, exactly. Who comes on board next? You've got no idea.
Yeah.
And I mean, I won't go into Noster too much now because I've talked about it a lot. But
go listen to the Ben Ark.
If you're thinking long term, you have to think about those kind of platforms.
And also, you have to think about redundancies. Don't be just in one place, but copy paste yourself to other platforms if you don't want to be censored, because that's the reality that we live in. So do you want me to give some examples?
Of course I do.
Or actually,
I want anything that we can do to just distance ourselves from the fact that people are going to say, some kind of crazy conspiracy happening. Yeah. Because the word conspiracy has become such a powerful tool to undermine all these kind of things.
Yeah.
And the only antidote to it is facts. And it's not even any old facts. You can use the facts that come out of the mouths of the people that are apparently involved in the conspiracy. So even if they're lying, it doesn't matter. They're the ones that are actually saying these things. So yeah, I'd love as many examples as you can.
Well, I have a few that I think it's not necessarily examples, but also some progress to pay attention to on the Agenda 2030. So basically what I'm seeing, I've been following it for a while, is that the end goal is 2030, but actually they also have a 2050 vision, a larger vision of where they want humanity to be in 2050. There's a dedicated website for it. There's an NGO that deals just with 2050. There are many things in place already to try and envision the life that we will live in 2050. But when we look at 2030, they have to bring it out of the shadows and into the forefront, because it has to already go down to the domestic level, government level, and then to the municipality level and your and mine daily lives. So it has to stop being a rumor or an agenda or a plan on paper, and it needs to start living its own life, visualizing into existence. And so what we can track or see are legislations in many countries. And so I mentioned before that one of the things that is happening right now are climate laws. So in a lot of different countries, you have different climate legislation that is shaping up or already passed. Some of it will be related to renewable and sustainable energy. Some of it will be related to carbon taxing and carbon in general. Some of it will be related to natural resources and even health. Climate and health, those two agendas go hand in hand. If you actually bother to take your country's climate bill copy and read it, which I've done in Israel, it's on the table. It passed, I think, 1 or 2 stages, and it's about to pass into law very soon. The framework of the bill is already in place. There's a 50-page document which you can read through, and they make references to Agenda 2030. They make references to the UN agenda. So, at that stage, it stops being a conspiracy. It's already, okay, I'm aligning with that plan because that plan talks about these guidelines that we have to implement in our daily lives. For example, transportation, less personal cars, more walking, more bicycle, more buses and public transport, more electronic vehicles and less fossil fuel vehicles, right? So the whole transportation area is being heavily influenced by the climate agenda. How you travel, where you travel, creating urban cities, especially the big metropolitan areas, into places that are a lot more, they're a lot harder to maneuver in because you have to follow these transportation means. You cannot drive your car anymore because a lot of places will be closed off, or you will have to pay taxes in order to get into the big cities at certain times. You will have tollways into the big cities. And these things are happening all around the world. In Canada, we've seen a nice example, I think it was last year, where there's this island in Canada, a small island, I forget the name, that started charging entry tax into the island just because they can. You travel into the island, you have to pay a tax. And so the residents of the island started revolting against it. What the fuck? Like, we've never paid a tax to go in and out. It's with a ferry, I think. Oh, okay. I forget the name.
Though? To the central government?
To the municipality or the government. I don't remember if it was state government or municipality. They managed to revoke that tax, but it was put in place just because they can, because of climate, because of carbon. Like, this has become now the easy excuse to tax you or the city or whatever, like under every change that you will see now related to transportation, related to your urban life, related to moving around, it will be under the guise of we're helping, Mother Nature from destruction. We're saving Mother Earth. And so this agenda is very advanced, and you'll see it everywhere, including in our children's education books in school. I actually took my son's science book and read it and saw what they're teaching him in school. I think it was year 7 or 8, and they were teaching them about sustainable energy and about the different types of green energies that there are, and why fossil fuels is bad and green energy is good. And it was all very, very like black and white. And they're talking about climate change and global warming, and the whole agenda, whether you agree with it or not, is in your kids' textbooks already, and that's what they're learning. And if I hadn't been paying attention and wouldn't see what my son is learning in school and wouldn't stop him and then listen with him together to a podcast to explain to him what's actually happening with the climate and what kind of scam there is to make us believe that CO2 is going to ruin our lives. CO2 is the most dangerous gas on Earth, where really it's the gas of life. Then he would believe everything that they would tell him. So this is so well ingrained already in our daily lives that it's as if it happened too fast for us to notice. But the whole climate agenda is really dictating a lot of how we live our lives. And I'm jumping to the last example that I wanted to give it. I'll give it now. There's an organization, you may have covered it on this podcast because it's very relevant, and I'm sorry if you did, called C40. No. Have you? You haven't? Okay. No, so C40 is an organization, a consortium of about 100 cities. It's established in 2005 with a focus on climate. You can just Google C40 and you'll see the website. The goal is to build these cities as smart, green, more sustainable cities by reducing carbon emissions by 2030. You'll see 2030 everywhere. When you start noticing it, you'll understand it's all connected to the Agenda 2030. Their slogan is Build Back Better, which that is too funny. Now, they have short-term plans and they have longer-term plans. So in the short-term plans from 21 to 24, it coincides that in 2020, they got time to actually rebuild the cities without interruptions when COVID started. So their short-term plan is to create those cities into more green and more sustainable and and with more cameras, and with more surveillance, but also more green. So in July 2020, and I quote from the website, experts have been warning of a coming pandemic for decades, and yet we weren't ready when the pandemic really hit. Now, as cities and countries work towards recovery, it's clear we've come to a crossroads. If we want true recovery and resilience in case of a future disaster, we're going to need both social and environmental justice. This is why in April 2020, C40 mayors launched the Global Mayors COVID-19 Recovery Task Force. The goal is simple: rebuild cities and economies in a way that improves public health, reduces inequality, and addresses the climate crisis, keeping global heating below 1.5 degrees Celsius.
So tired.
So, and then you see that, and this was written in July 2020, and there's a gorgeous also video that I play in my talk to show how they stood up in July 2020 and brought all these mayors from all around the world talking about the pandemic that almost came as a miracle for us, because now we have time when everyone's in lockdowns, we have time to actually go and, push harder on creating our cities as greener and more sustainable. Now we can install those cameras that we wanted and start working on our 15-minute cities. And Melbourne, for example, was great at doing that during the lockdowns. And Melbourne and Victoria in general were one of the more, I think it was the most locked down city in the world. It was like 200 and something days out of 365. locked down. People could not leave their houses. So they had lots of time to improve the city during that time. And so you look at these coincidences and you ask, is it a coincidence that the pandemic came and they had all this time to actually implement the agendas that they had on the C40 website from 2005, all related to climate and cities? And now it came and they're blessing on this opportunity to then go ahead and implement their plans. It all looks so miraculous, so magical that everything happens in such a wonderful coincidence. So C40 is an organization to follow and watch. Go check out their website. You decide whether this is all. And the way that they're tying health and climate, it almost feels like it's a match made in heaven. They were almost waiting for a pandemic to come so they can put the climate on top of it and then start working on smart cities. Amazing. So.
What? I mean, it's all so. What's that mean? It's all so tiresome, isn't it? It's like, oh my god. Well, because it's what I want to understand is.
We go back to the why every time.
No, but I do, because I'm looking for a solution. Like, if we understand, the more whys I understand, the more solutions I'll be able to help implement, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about what you've just said about certain organizations using lockdowns in order to, carry out certain things. And yeah, of course, I can believe that's true, and I'm sure it is true.
That's why you had essential employees.
Right, okay, but what about the people at local government who are kind of, sending out their workers and stuff? Are they, because they're not complicit in this, they're complicit in this, but they don't...
They follow orders. For them, it makes sense that some people will be essential and others not, and that some projects are very important and others are not.
It's kind of, I
wish I had a better answer for you, but yeah, people really just follow orders. They don't stop to think, and they definitely don't stop to object or resist.
I know, but it took a lot to object to the lockdowns to begin with. I remember. Mm-hmm. I remember the process that I went through. I went on a journey with lockdowns, and it was quite a few months before I even tweeted, look, this is wrong, guys. You know what I mean? It wasn't
because they put you in a state of shock. It takes you time to snap out of it.
It was.
And go, oh, hold on, something's weird here. I mean, at the beginning, it's nice. You can sit at home, drink hot cocoa, and play board games. But you realize, hold on, they actually forbid me from going out of my house.
Well, some of the stuff that came out of Australia was unbelievable.
Yes.
People walking around with the coffee cups, weren't they? Because they were allowed to go and get a coffee, and they were
people
empty.
People getting arrested for surfing.
Cops checking how much coffee they had in their things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so... I mean, I don't use this word often, but it's so retarded.
It is.
That I can't even believe that these things are happening, and that you're a cop checking someone's coffee cup and you're not going, hold on a minute, am I the
That's why everyone wants to... Dude, that's why everyone wants to forget what happened. And I am one of those annoying flies on the wall that keeps reminding people so that we don't forget that it can get much worse. But yeah, it was a test balloon for society. It's crazy. And it's going to get worse. With CBDCs, it's going to get worse. But, climate is a crazy agenda. I didn't even start talking about the whole personal carbon footprint bullshit that I have a whole article about it that I wrote with so many different examples for how they are actually implementing, measuring your own personal carbon footprint. It's everywhere. So, and this is very pervasive. The food thing is the same. It's not just trying to turn into sources of food that are polluting environment less, but also to then take over your nutrition and your sources of health by telling you that these types of food are better for the environment than others. So processed food and meat that was grown in a lab is better for you than normal meat, and the bugs are better for you than, and they're taking over everything. And that obviously ties into taking over farmland and properties from farmers, which is related to all the different demonstrations we've seen around the world from farmers because the government is clamping down on them.
And climate's one of the massive tools, isn't it? When you look across those, it really is.
Climate is like a connecting thread between a lot of the things we're seeing. And it's going to be the excuse for many of the things that we are going to see. And the climate agenda itself, and I would recommend people to follow James Corbett and the 2 documentaries that he has done about the origins of oil in the 1900s with John D. Rockefeller, etc., and how it all started, because climate goes back a long time, like the beginning of the 1900s, where it started with like origins in eugenics and how we need to control population. So it ties into that, and it's a very old agenda, but the thing is that it gets more and more sophisticated and more up to date to where we are today. And that's why you keep seeing all these globalist events. You're seeing every year you have the UN Assembly, but you have the World Health Organization assemblies, and you have the Davos, which is just increasing twice a year in China and in Davos in Switzerland. And you have extra events, just like you had Rio de Janeiro in 92. So now there was another event in September last month, Pact for the Future in New York. It was tied in next to the Assembly of the UN, but it was its own event for a few days. And it was called Pact for the Future. And that event, and the reason why they're coming up and doing all these different events is because they have to make it more relevant, more up to date, more in your face and in your life right now. So we will see this accelerating, this trend of more and more, it's in the media, it's in the events, it's everywhere. And just follow them. So there's a great 12 minutes video by Beverly Turner from GB News. She's explaining what Agenda 2030 is from the lens of Pact for the Future, that event. So Pact for the Future covers a wide array of themes, including peace and security, sustainable development, climate change, digital cooperation, also known as clamping down on your free speech, human rights, gender equality, youth and future generation. It also focuses on transforming global governance to better address these challenges. Now, even when you just hear the words global governance, who wants global governance? I just elected my prime minister, maybe, or just one party. Why global governance? Do I want to be governed by global organizations? And this is a topic for them in this event. So the Pact for the Future just happened. It basically created a Pact for the Future agreement that, again, all countries that are members of the UN were agreeing to that pact. And it created 2 complementary documents in that event. One is called Global Digital Compact, and the other one is called Declaration on Future Generations. And they handle all the topics of Agenda 2030. They just, again, they digest it even more and bringing it into your life in a more explicit way. So, and this will continue happening. And then I have one last example. And it's from June 2023. There is a document that comes out from the UN again, and it's called Information Integrity on Digital Platforms. And the title for this, the reason for bringing about this document is because the SDGs that we were talking about, the Sustainable Development Goals, are failing. So you see the head of the UN, Antonio Guterres, standing on stage, speaking about how we are failing with the implementation of the SDGs. We have to work harder. We have to be better at complying with the SDGs. And basically what it was, this charade, was a pretense for all the misinformation and disinformation and hate speech laws and legislation that you saw that started coming out a little bit after that June 23 speech and document that came out. And that document provides a gold standard for guiding action to strengthen information integrity. Now, this is important. The reason why I'm giving this example is because these people that, like you referred to before, they actually think that they know better than us and that they own some kind of truth. So if you Google Melissa Fleming, she's the director of global communications for the United Nations. There's a very famous clip of her from 2022 saying, she's interviewed and she's saying, well, if you type in climate change on Google, you get all these weird results. And so we saw that and we were like, hang on. So we partnered with Google in order to put some order into this, because we own the science and we need the world to know it. That's a direct quote of what she said. So these people actually think that they own the science or own anything else for that matter, and that they need the world to know it, so they will enforce it, so they will do all these public-private partnerships in order to make sure that they control the truth and the information. So circling back to this document, called the Information Integrity on Digital Platforms, the reasons that the UN gives for damaging the success of the Sustainable Development Goals are related to misinformation online and harming the integrity of information. So they made a table with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and they explain in this document, next to each goal, why this goal is failing because of information integrity problems. And if you read through it, which I've done, I don't recommend you do it because you'll suffer. It's not nice, but I did it and I wrote an article and I gave the actual quote from the document, and next to it, I gave my interpretation of what they're actually saying. They're blaming misinformation, disinformation, and convoluting information or hate speech to the lack of success of implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. And when you get to the end of it, their recommendation or their suggestion is we have to clamp down harder on social media, on the internet, and on the information on the internet, and control it even more so that people will not be able to spread this wrong information anymore. And only if we do that, we will be then able to successfully implement the Sustainable Development Goals. This document blows your head off. It's crazy. Look at this diagram from this document. Misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, and in the middle, pollutes the information ecosystem and threatens human progress. This is from the document. These people are insane.
It's Ministry of Truth stuff, isn't it?
I'm telling you, this is Ministry of Truth. This is and double speak everywhere. You read the table and you read, I'm going to give you one example from the table. Okay, I'm going to read one example. Goal number 1, SDG number 1, which is no to poverty. It says, this is a quote from the document, mis and disinformation continues to have implications for poverty eradication efforts and the global economy. Economic hardship can also fuel the spread of polarizing and hateful lies, including about marginalized groups. The cost of living crisis have been particularly fertile ground for the dissemination of disinformation, falsely blaming the switch to renewable energy for soaring energy costs or job losses, for instance. So they're blaming job losses, they're blaming energy costs going high on misinformation, right? Because and so what I wrote is, poverty is not caused by fiat, not caused by wars, not caused by the damage to global supply chains, to rising energy prices, damage to agriculture and farmers and the food industry. Poverty is because you spread misinformation, disinformation. That's their line of thought. So this is gaslighting at its best. the methods, and now speaking as a marketeer and an expert in communication, the methods that they are using to actually convince the layman, the normal person in the street that Agenda 2030 is good for them is by gaslighting them over and over again with shame and guilt and responsibility that does not exist. It's because of you that the climate is going crazy. It's like they're making all these connections and all these false pretenses and claims that you read it, and it's all written in such a nice, lovely way that, you know, you go, oh yeah, I also don't want poverty. I want the climate to be great, and I want good health and well-being, and I want equality and all these things. But really, it's all communism in disguise. It's all about clamping down on your rights, and it's being delivered to you in such manipulative ways, psychologically, that if you are not critical enough, if you are not smart enough to detect it, if you are not strong enough mentally to say, I'm being lied to, I'm being manipulated here, and I will not take that, this is ridiculous, then you will believe it, and you will carry that badge of honor of Agenda 2030 on your...
Do you know what, though? Because it's not even as... I mean, that's true what you just said, but when Agenda 21 was coming out, I was hanging out with a lot of environmentalists. I was ecology at university and all this kind of stuff. And I remember the buzz around Agenda 21. Everyone wanted to get on board. These are good people.
Sure.
Hearing, hey, here's the thing, let's get on board. Oh, I'm going to a conference.
We're talking
in yeah. And that's a really, really powerful part of this, is good meaning people wanting to get on board.
Yes.
And
then they stay because of the incentive structures.
Yes.
They stay because of the social incentives and because of the financial incentives. I've just interviewed Professor Stephen Koonin from NYU, and he's a climate expert. And he says, you find those engineers or researchers or professors that talk about global warming and justify climate change policies. You can stop and then go and check their funding and then see that they are getting all those grants from IPCC, which is the UN climate body, or the governments, or there's ample funding and money. The incentive structure is in place to make you want to continue following a false narrative and not stop to go and check things that you may be relying on things that other people did, but you're not even checking whether it's true or not. And a lot of these things have been debunked already. I mean, I encourage people to go watch the documentary Climate the Movie by Tom Nelson and Martin Durkin, which is an awesome documentary that really debunks all the gaslighting we've been fed about climate change. And the people that are being interviewed are professors that handle or researchers that are handling climate and handling, environmental issues. They're not against the environment or the world. They want to make the world a better place. They just have different views, or they show you different data that is being completely silenced and censored. And they're going through exactly what the dissident doctors went through at COVID. They're going through exactly the same thing with climate, but dating back even more. It started for them a long time ago. So the movie Climate the Truth is excellent. It's on my blog as well.
Well, climate's you can't say a bad word against it, can you? And when you think about all the things, all these protected ideas, climate's one of the biggest, isn't it?
Right.
Currently.
And I've interviewed, you talked before about Daniel Prince. I interviewed Daniel and I asked him about this as well. And he said, you know what? It's all about half-truths. Because a lot of the things that they are doing or talking about or referring to, they have some truth in them. Yeah, we all want to live in a place where we have all our amenities close to us and we don't have to travel far and it's all convenient. There is some truth in that, in convenience. But they take something that is a grain of truth and they cover it with a lot of manipulation and lies. And then it's very hard to distinguish between the part that is true and the part that is false in the topic that you're dealing with. You have to be super critical and also have to be smart in how you communicate it, that you don't, you don't make everyone come against you. I forgot the term.
Yeah, alienate people.
Alienate people, that's right.
Okay, so I'm in agreement with you that this is happening. I'm in agreement with you that it's a long-term plan. I believe it's groups of people that have incentives to organise this, and it does filter down to the sort of layperson, and it does get implemented. I got a couple of questions, I suppose. Mm-hmm. The first and obvious one is, well, how do we work against it? Or not even that. How do we deal with it? I think would be a better way. And secondly, will everyone be on board? Like, is it worth trying to save everyone? Mm-hmm. I suppose is a way of putting it. Like, do we create something do we create an inclusive solution or not?
What do you mean inclusive?
Well, like, I get this distinct feeling that most people don't care. No. And would live in a 15-minute city mm-hmm. as long as they could do XYZ and play Xbox and
use their digital wallet with CBDCs to buy coffee. Yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So we're in agreement then. It's not necessarily important to fix the world here.
I think it's not that it's not important. I wish I could. I actually wish that I had a superpower that I could just like tap people and wake them up and make them aware. But I really believe that it's a soul's choice. And I believe that people have to find the courage within in order to wake up and see this and act. Because when you see this, people know that it's not enough to see it. You have to actually take action in your life and change something. And most people don't want to do that. It takes too much action, courage, inconvenience and responsibility to do that. And most people don't want the responsibility. They want to be taken care of. They want Big Daddy to be there and make sure that they are protected, that they have their needs taken care of, that the kids go to somewhere and they don't have to annoy them too much. Like most people don't have the capacity to actually live a sovereign life. So I think that you cannot wake up everyone and you cannot create an inclusive kind of solution. And I actually think, and this is after going through a lot of stages in my personal life, that I have been in the streets for 2 years and I've done some activism and I've done many, many things, but I really ended up now thinking that all you can do is work on yourself, get closer to yourself in order to fulfill your potential to the max. And when you fulfill your potential to the max, you can then radiate who you are and what you stand for, the values you stand for, to humanity and to the world, so that your energy resonates and the people that find you compelling will be attracted to you and you will resonate with them, and then they will choose to be influenced by you. You cannot actively influence someone else. I mean, you can try. I'm a marketeer. I know how to do these things, but it's manipulative. And those are not the ways I choose. So I choose to put myself out there, to put my content out there. You were saying before that you see me too much, but I put myself out there.
Not too much.
I'm joking, because I do it. I do it a lot. That's my way. I'll just put myself out there, and whomever this resonates with, they'll know what to do with it. It will touch them. It will hit them in the right point. It will trigger something. They will take it. They will go research more. So I put myself out there as much as possible. I'm also making myself available for people who have questions and want to learn something, understand more, ask a question or be guided to some resource. And whenever people approach me, and they approach me every day, I answer. I try to as much as I can. On private messaging, I get so many private questions from people, and I do my best to be there for other people, because once someone actually shows a sign of caring, I want to know, I want to do something, I want to take action, I want to change something, then I think the best we can do is just be there for them. So you have the work that you need to do, which is super important, is to clear out your space as much as possible so that you can be there for others. It's just like this metaphor of being on the plane and the oxygen mask comes down. You first put it on yourself and then the kid that is next to you, because you first have to breathe and then you can help others. So first clear out your space, work on your traumas, do inner work, do mental, spiritual, whatever kind of work that resonates with you in order to clear out your shit so that you have enough space to serve humanity, to serve other people when they need you and if they need you. And so I think that we cannot save everyone. I think that it's a waste of energy to try and do that. I also think that demonstrating, protesting as a usual thing is a waste of time and energy. I think from time to time we see like big movements that could make headlines, like the farmers' protests, for example, started in Canada, then Netherlands, then in all of Europe, Germany, even in Israel we had one. Like you had many of them. That was a nice viral thing that happened, but that doesn't happen often. And I think it is important to do that, but don't burn yourself out on demonstrating and protesting in the street, because the actual impact or the influence that it has on changing the course of things is limited. Instead, what you can do is, and I think we said that in the end of our previous podcast, is try and starve the beast that is planning all this stuff, which is the fiat beast. The Agenda 2030 wouldn't have not been possible without fiat. They can print as much money as they want, so they can create all this shenanigan, right? But if we take our hard-earned savings and money and wealth and transfer it to another system, then we slowly but surely starve the beast. We take our money out of pensions, we take our money out of whatever kind of savings you have with fiat in the traditional system. You buy more Bitcoin, you act in a sovereign way, you guard what's yours, and you become responsible for what's yours. Yes, it's not a small ask. You need to work in it and be responsible, but you become your own master in your own bank.
What about one of the hottest topics that, with regards to all this stuff, that we always end up talking about, and I've yet to find a really compelling answer for yet, is where do you do all this? Because...
What do you mean where?
Where as in they're working on yourself, serving others, doing all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
One of the fly in the ointment in all this stuff is where you're going to be, where you're going to live. Where are you going to be free? Where are you going to be able to live?
Oh, where physically?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let me challenge you with something.
Go on.
You know what people ask me all the time, because I live in Israel. They ask me, are you safe there? And my answer is, what is safety? And it's the same as, what is free? So is freedom or safety? Those are constructs that live in the earthy world, in the physical world only. I mean, because they do have a physical manifestation. You obviously are safer if you have a shelter in your home, or if you have an alarm, or I don't know, you have different mechanisms you can put in place in order to be safer. But I'll give you one example, which is very sad but true. On October 7th, people were in their shelters, in their homes, under a regime that is supposed to protect them with police, with army, with intelligence, and with Air Force, and with many other means, and they were slaughtered in their own shelters. So is that safe? And they are in a country where all Jewish people around the world are being fed with a narrative from the moment that they are born that the safest place for Jewish people is Israel. That's the safest place. Are they safe? There is no such thing as safe if you do the work on yourself. and you start digesting what it means for you to be safe. First of all, in your physical environment, but secondly, in your mental state. Safety is a mental state. Do I feel safe? Am I trusting myself and the universe that I am safe? There are many layers on top of the earthly manifestation of the physical safety. And so I think that you can feel safe in an unsafe environment where I live in Israel right now. I know it's unsafe, but I feel safe. I don't wake up in the morning being scared or fearful. I actually was recording the podcast with Walker, and he's interviewing me, and then those rockets start firing from Iran right next to my house, and you hear the booms, and I don't stop because I'm not afraid. And as I said, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go.
Yes, but Efrat, that's all very well. But one of those rockets could have hit your house. You could make a better decision about where you live.
100%.
So why wouldn't you?
Well, first of all, where I live, I feel like I'm protected. If I saw that the missiles would have become accelerated or more missiles, I would then go and stay with my parents that have a shelter, right? So I would take measures that would better protect me. But because it was a one-off attack, I didn't do it because I know how to evaluate already my situation. It may not be ideal if you compare me to other people in Israel. They don't behave like me. Some people do, some people don't. And it's a personal choice, it's a personal decision. But when you then come to how do I maximize my safety or how do I maximize my freedom, is you have to take the measures that will make you feel in your sensation and in your mindset as free and as safe as possible. If this is safe enough for me, it's fine with me. If this is free enough for me, it's fine with me. If I don't feel safe enough in Israel, and as I said, I do, but if I don't feel free enough in Israel, which I don't, I would leave. And the only reason why I'm not leaving now is for personal reasons, my boyfriend being in Israel, but I would leave and go somewhere else. And this is also something that, now having Bitcoin, it enables us to do that. Okay. So I do think that people need to look at the where, but they also need to look at the mindset that they have about those questions of safety and freedom.
I suppose what I mean then is part of the mindset of freedom can be predicting the future, as you are now. You're predicting, and we all are. We're all looking at the trajectory of, say, Agenda 2030, 2050. You see the trajectory it's on. You can understand the stage. It's very simple. You see that chances are it's happening. So if you're living in Canada, in Toronto, and you notice all this stuff popping up around you, you've got a decision to make for your future, for your children's future. That's the question that so many people ask me is, where do you go? Like, what? I know so many people in 2020, myself included, who went off on a trip around the world to go and have a look at a few places because they were like, holy shit, my country just did this. What's plan B?
I do the same. Whenever I travel now, I look at those places as alternatives to where I live. And I've already identified for myself a few places that I'd be very happy to move to in the next few years. For me, El Salvador is definitely one of them. I've been to Thailand several times, and Koh Phangan is a great island that I would move to.
God,
yeah.
I lived on Koh Phangan in the early 90s. It was people were burning their passports and living in caves and stuff. It was
my god.
Yeah. The beach.
It's amazing.
Well, I've heard differently now. I thought it's got very developed, hasn't it?
It is developed, but the good thing for it is that it can never be populated more than, I think it's 25% of the island because of the natural reserve that is on it. Yeah. By law, you're not allowed to build more than 25%.
That's a sideline. That's a whole other question.
And there are other places.
So Thailand. Come on, let's talk about them because these are the practical questions I get asked the most. And I've yet to find an answer because
places where you have Bitcoin circular economies. So when I look at what's happening in Costa Rica, I look at what's happening in in Thailand there is one as well, north and south, like the islands, but also north of Thailand. Indonesia, there in Bali, there is a nice circular economy taking shape. Guatemala, there is one. Peru, but I will not go and live in Peru. But wherever there's a good, large circular economy, and El Salvador, by the way, it's more than one place. So Berlin in El Salvador and El Zonte and San Salvador, there are various places in El Salvador. Honduras, right? In Roatan, right. So these places where I know that I can communicate with like-minded people and use my Bitcoin, that is very compelling for me.
While you're here, you've got to talk to a guy called Patrick Hibbert.
Okay.
Do you know him? He's kind of building, well, for want of a better expression, libertarian places around the world.
Yes.
And they all accept Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, the journey he's been on. I interviewed him yesterday because he was building these places. And then after 2020, it's like, no, we're building libertarian places. You know what I mean? So many people had an inflection point in 2020.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, and things like that give me hope, because I think the more things like that happen, the more people will wake up and go, hold on a minute, this isn't necessarily what I want to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, there'll be other times. And, you know, the next time anyone locks anyone down, quite a substantial percentage of the population are going to be going, hold on a minute, I know how I feel about the last time this happened. So now I've got a choice.
Yeah.
I'm probably more likely to rebel from the word go as well, not just think about it for a few months and then start tweeting a bit and then start sort of not wearing a mask in defiance or whatever.
No,
but actually saying,
no,
I'm just going to walk outside my house today and fuck you. And
exactly.
You know,
Portugal is another one, for sure. Portugal is on my radar. And I have an Australian citizenship. I can go and live in Australia. My son is there, but I don't want to.
Yeah, Oz doesn't strike me as the kind of place. That was a shock. Canada, Australia, you know, during the pandemic. And do you know what?
And I hear a lot of good things about Dubai, but hard for me to think about living
Dubai
there.
Dubai is interesting because it's, in one sense, it's apolitical. You don't go to Dubai to vote on anything. You go to Dubai to use their product, which is Dubai. But, you know, it's a kind of, they're monarchies. Mm-hmm. And they are quite strict in certain senses that you might not like. Mm-hmm. And monarchies are great until the son is a douchebag or the daughter, and then you're suddenly living in a living hell. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people love Dubai. I mean, obviously, it's a acquired taste as well, living in the desert. It's not ideal. But I don't know.
I have friends who live in Sri Lanka. They bought some real estate and setting up shop there, which is very interesting.
Do you know what happened?
Financially, economically, some of these places are very tough. But
do you know what happened to me though? And it happened to, who was I speaking to? Someone else today. Mm. We've got to find a plan B in 2020. Went to Mexico, El Salvador, tried all these places. I would have taken any number of the places. But in my case, I had a family in tow, 3 children and a wife. In the end, I couldn't make the decision. It was a family decision. Mm-hmm. And Liz, my wife, couldn't be far from her friends and family.
Right.
Which is a fair point.
Yeah, sure.
And this is a problem. Mm-hmm. This is a problem if you want to be one of these people that top on your toes, finding freedom in an unfree world, you know.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
We've ended up reestablishing ourselves, albeit in a very remote farm, but we've reestablished ourselves in the UK. And my theory is, look, second best. Because my kids love where we live. They love the school they go to. They love their area. We've got land and stuff. And if you can't do that move to El Salvador or whatever, you've got, we thought, right, remote house, land, somewhere to grow food, you know, just in case. I mean, worst case scenario.
Is a good plan B.
But anyone can come and knock on my door. They know where I live. You're under arrest for,
sure,
I don't know, bad speech on
For
Nostra.
speaking about Agenda 2030 on your podcast.
Yeah, so I don't know. I must admit though, I do like, and this is something I probably haven't thought enough about, and I'm starting to understand now that freedom is something you feel. Even, and like Victor, Man's Search for Meaning and all this, being in a gulag and being completely unfree, yet feeling free. This is probably the place you need to really begin your journey,
Exactly.
And I've dwelt a lot on the physical side of it. Because, I don't know, because it really does bug me. People lock me up, I will go absolutely crazy, and I know
that my previous answer to your question may have not been what you're expecting or wanting, but it really is that for me, it's first spiritual and mental and then physical.
Can I ask you a question though?
Sure.
Because reading between the lines, when you were saying, feeling free, it had a pretty spiritual connotation.
Yeah.
But that's a place a lot of people don't want to go. And a lot of people don't even believe that maybe that there is a realm at play that could be affecting them. And, how important is it to go there? I mean, I've never heard you speak about it, but I'm just going to guess.
It's liberating.
From talking to...
And I'm not a religious person. I'm not religious at all, but I have, in the last few years, have done a lot of work spiritually and mentally to understand. Well, my journey started with researching reincarnations and life after death. Because when my grandfather died about 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I had a lot of questions that were not answered. So that's where my journey started. I got this book that talked about life after death from this psychiatrist in the US that hypnotizes people and brings them back to previous reincarnations and helps them recover and completely heal from traumas that they're carrying, that nothing that they tried managed to heal them. It's a wonderful book because it is and it was for normies like me that did not have any connection to spirituality or religion or anything like that. And all of a sudden I'm reading these things, and these are true stories, and I read a few books of his afterwards. I will find the name for you. And that opened a whole realm for me of like, okay, so hold on. So there's life beyond what we're being told. And that started like a journey of learning, gradual, very slowly throughout the last 10, 12 years. And there was always another layer or another patch that I bumped into and then researched more. Whereas when I got to the stage where I understood things about senses, the 5 senses, and how much more our brains are capable of processing than what we actually are able to conceive with our 5 senses. Things that are related to the paranormal and the sixth sense and feelings and energies and things like that. And you actually understand that your brain is wired to travel. Like, for example, when you dream, so you go and research your dream state and what happens there and the different frequencies. When you sleep, what kind of frequencies your brain is operating on, and vibrations, and like it's a whole world, and the spectrum of energy of what we can actually take as an input versus what actually exists in the universe. You have to open your mind and understand that there's a lot more than what we have been conditioned to believe. And when you start researching and learning about these things, and one of the things that really helped me in that journey when I got to that point was mushrooms, because when I experimented with mushrooms, I went to places that, I never thought existed. Yeah, experienced dreams in the past, but this was like being awake and not being here, like being here and not being here. There are other dimensions. It's like opening doors and taking you to other places. And then you learn that your brain actually has the receptors for mushrooms, just like for cannabis, that we have those receptors wired in our cells and our brains. And so if it exists and we are wired in that way, and we just haven't tried all these things before, then we are created in that way for a reason, right? Because if we have those receptors, we're supposed to like engage with it. Otherwise, why does it exist? And so it's a rabbit hole that you just continue learning and exploring, and you suddenly understand that this machine, this physical machine that you have, is a wonderful creation of God. There is no other conclusion that you can get to, that you are a godly creature, that you have godly powers. And the more you surrender, or at least try on the belief that there is something more than what you're seeing, or there is something extra than what you've been taught, the more you are open to it and the more you experiment with it, the more you actually start receiving the proofs for it in your life, because you're open to it. So things start happening, and there's this synchronicity that starts happening, and then you start learning and researching about quantum physics and quantum mechanics and the quantum world and energies and how energies work. And like, I learn a lot about these things. And I think you ask, why is it important? I think, first of all, I enjoy it immensely to learn and understand that this existence, some people refer to it as meat suit. The meat suit I've been given is a wonderful machine, that there is none other like it, but that it also holds my spirit, and that my spirit is so much bigger than just this body, and it has no boundaries like this physical creation has. It has to sleep, it has to eat, it has to, it ages and all that, but with your spiritual self, you are endless, and you exist before and after and always, and you can do so much more with your soul and your spirit than you can with your physical body. So and then it also breaks down a lot of the definitions that you are limiting yourself to. If you're limiting yourself to the definitions of what I think, what I feel, what I believe, when you act on a soul or a spirit level, you understand that a lot of these mechanisms are just manifestations of the polarized 3D world that we live in, a very physical world. And when you ascend in consciousness to higher dimensions, to the 5th dimension, etc., then those rules don't exist. And there is no polarizing good and bad, right or wrong. Time and space don't exist in those dimensions. And so you can experience other things. I don't know if it happened to you ever, where you had glitches of time, or where you felt like I was gazing for a second and then I lost track of time, but then I was not here and then I came back. Like, things like that happen to people, but they dismiss it and they don't try and see what has happened. But this is all related to quantum energy and quantum physics, and we do snap in and out of other dimensions all the time, but we normally just dismiss it as something weird that has just happened. Just like in the Matrix, I just had a deja vu, that kind of stuff.
Yes. A lot of people probably see what we're talking about here as a spiritual battle.
Oh yeah.
Right. But you also, in talking about it in those terms, you lose a lot of people. I'm pretty sure you do. I know.
That's why we didn't talk about it this whole time.
I know, but
you took me there, dude.
I know, but I just want to ask. But I agree that is it necessary to talk about it in those terms, and also is it necessary, according to you, to view it through that lens?
Of which lens?
It's a spiritual battle. The 2030 stuff, the 2050 stuff.
Mm-hmm. Is it necessary?
No, for you, I mean. Because, like I say, if I just say all that stuff you say about all the spirituality is true, you're going to lose a load of people. But from you personally, right? Do you view it through that lens? Are you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I do. I view it through that lens, and not only that I view it through that lens, I bring guests to my podcast to talk about it as well, specifically about the spiritual stuff. And I explore with them how what we're seeing around the world right now is a spiritual battle. I have a great episode about that with Dro on my podcast, and I can give you the link. I think it's so important to do that. I don't care if it turns some people off. If it does, okay. I mean, either leave me, like that's the thing. We live in a free world, and this is a free choice. And as I told you before, my method and my philosophy is putting myself out there while being true to who I am and my values, and it will resonate with the right people, with the ones that need to hear what I have to say, or be with me on that journey, or take something from me, or help me in some way. So I really believe in that divine interaction. So it's okay if they leave. It's okay if I don't resonate with them anymore. I don't do what I do just to get the likes or the numbers or whatever. I do it because I feel like what I have to say and give is important. And I want to give it out there. I'm already used to many people leaving in the last few years.
Don't misinterpret me. I believe that the reason we do the things we do, that we're in service, as you were saying, and I want to affect as many people as I can. So I know that if I go off on a spiritual rant, which I often do, you have to choose your battles. Okay. That's all I'm saying. I was just interested to know, because whether or not... I
love doing it. I think it also adds another dimension to what you're saying, because when you can show people how this is also not just in a hippie talk, but just actually talk about why this would be a spiritual battle. What are the proofs for it? How does it manifest in the world? What does awakening mean? And how can you tell if someone is awakening or not? And it goes back to sovereignty and responsibility. And if you can then cross-validate your points from your physical world and the spiritual world, and you get to the same conclusion, then that's very powerful. And that's why I think that episode I did with Dro, the spiritual teacher, was so well accepted with my audience, because they got a different view on things that are happening to them on the everyday life. And it wasn't a Bitcoin episode, it was a spiritual episode, but it gave validity to so many of the things that they feel and see and now understand. It's like the way I look at it, and this is, I don't know, there are so many misconceptions, like spiritual is bad and this is good and whatever. The way I look at it is just like equipping my audience or my friends with another tool set. So when I give them the gift of the lens of spirituality, the gift of looking at things from a spiritual perspective, what do I give them is a vocabulary, it's a set of distinctions, it's a set of metaphors to look at life from, and then assess. And as long as I trust, first of all, I honor the fact that they are intelligent listeners and they will do with the content whatever they need to do with it. And if it doesn't work for them, they will drop it. It's like a suit. They will try it on. If it works, they'll keep it. If it doesn't, they'll put it off and go away and maybe come back, and maybe they don't. I trust them. I see them as intelligent. I don't decide anything for them. I see myself as providing this as a service, and if it works for them, they take it. They may get huge benefit out of it. They've now been exposed to another set of vocabulary and tool set, and they can work with it in their lives if it serves them. If it doesn't, they don't have to. I mean, it's just like not everyone can do meditation. It doesn't work for everyone, but you get exposed to it and then you try it and you see whether it works for you or not. So I really respect and honor people's, sense of choice and decision making in their lives. That's how I
think the reason I brought it up is because I think there's an immense power in that side of this whole equation. And actually, if you stick to one side of the equation, it can be quite difficult and quite...
Because you try to rationalize everything with the same tool set.
You also really can't win.
You can't win.
I don't think. And not that necessarily it's about winning, but it is about creating the reality you want to see you want other people to experience, right?
No, what I said before about, you said, can we save everyone? Can we help everyone? No, and it's a soul's choice. That's exactly it. I come to it from a spiritual perspective and from a very knowledgeable perspective of preserving energy and manipulating energy in my life. So if I'm understanding the value of energy and how energy works and how it's my fuel and how I use that fuel to make for myself the most effective life I can have, then I'm smart enough to navigate my life with those both tool sets of, one, how to not waste my energy on things that don't contribute to my cause, and two, how to then make my experience the best experience I can have, or the most effective experience I can have here in this third dimension world, physical and spiritual. So if that's my goal, and I continue to expand my horizons and my tool sets and my lenses, and keep on trying different things, and keep for myself those lenses that work for me, that serve me, that resonate with me the most, then I'm just improving my game all the time. Because what is this? This is, I mean, life. It's so short, and it's an experience, one big experience full of small experiences to be had. That, you know, Kamala Harris says, the passage of time. It just it just goes so fast, and all we can do, it's a school of lessons. We can just learn and improve our game through that very limited time we've been given here on Earth, which is something that I'm not sure if I want to do again, but I'm giving it my all this time, you know?
Well, you went down the reincarnation rabbit hole, so you might not have a choice in that.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to come back here.
You know, I don't know whether you probably didn't listen to it, but I you remember when we spoke in Prague, I'd just spoken to Tur de Meester, and we ended up talking about past lives on that podcast. Really? Well, I used to, this is a massive tangent. I lived in Indonesia for almost 2 years, and I lived with he was on paper, he was a Buddhist teacher, but he wasn't actually. He was way weirder than that. It was just a kind of, you know, it was like there were elements of Buddhism in there. Anyway, they used to regress people. Uh-huh. I'm telling the story that I've already told on another episode. Okay. So it's normally not a good idea, but long story short, they regressed someone to a past trauma in a different, where they weren't humans, and they were on a massive, for want of a better expression, spaceship the size of a planet. And the only reason I'm saying this is because me and Tur talked about trauma and how, you know, trauma, getting past pieces of trauma are an important on the route to freedom, because most of the people don't even know they're there. But what was interesting about that example was, because he spoke about past trauma from like generational trauma. I said, but this was weird, because this was Indonesia, Central Java in the early 1990s, didn't have much contact with the outside world, you know, and they were talking about alien civilizations on like massive kind of like, you know, man-made or non-human made planets and stuff. And yeah, I mean, whether or not I mean, a lot of that part of my life is a complete blur now. At the time, it seemed amazing and it was phenomenal and it was all real. Now I can look back in hindsight and go, yeah, they were just neurons firing in my brain and none of that stuff's real, blah, blah. But what I always carried away from that time was the powerful spiritual experience that resides in me. And it's there for the taking at any time. And I think a lot of people don't experience that, have never experienced that. And I suppose my life sort of undulates between times of much more astute awareness, where I'm really aware, and then other times when I'm completely out of it. And in the times when I'm out of it, that's when I worry about physical freedom the most. Do you know what I mean?
Makes sense. Make absolute sense. And thanks for sharing that with me. That's awesome.
But anyway, go and listen to that episode.
I am going to listen to that episode.
But you heard about, do you know what Tour did?
Of course.
With Ibogaine,
Yeah. But as you were talking, it made me think that when people ask me about the time we are experiencing right now, here we are talking about Agenda 2030 and Bitcoin and all that stuff, so earthy. And then here we are jumping to talk about spirituality. I feel like the mission that I'm carrying is so much bigger than who I am. And I see myself as someone who has chosen to come here right now and be part of this amazing transition that we are experiencing in the world. This transition that we are undergoing right now, I don't think that this is a usual change. A lot of people speak about the fourth turning and the every 80 to 100 year cycle and all that in history. Yes, sure, that exists and it happens, and it's also characterized by a lot of wars and the changeover period and all that. But I think that this is way, way bigger than that. I think we are on the precipice of changing phases from humanity that is like an analog humanity to a digital humanity, one that is allowing technology and technocracy to rule over humanity. That's where it intersects with me, with the spiritual world. And I'm digital. I'm, Bitcoin and everything. I love digital. I have nothing against digital as a enabler. It's like everything. You have to distinguish between the good and bad in it. And the moment you allow technology or other entities to take over, like transhumanism, take over your choice, your free will, your existence in this world as a free creature, then this is a dangerous point in time. And that's why I think I have been put here in this time of humanity to make people aware, warn people, do something about it, be part of that change, but try and balance it for the better. And that's how I see my role. And I know that position is an uncomfortable position. It's inconvenient. It's not the popular stand. It's different. And that's why many people have a hard time, digesting me. And I get that. And I have a lot of compassion for them about that. But I am truly believing that I've been put here. I've chosen to come here at this time to be part of this, because this is monumental. This is big, what's happening right now. It's not just another plan, rich people doing things to poor people, fiat money changing. It's way, way bigger than that. And I think that if I'm able to take part in it, I'm privileged. As much as it's hard sometimes, it's a real privilege.
I think what you're describing there is the act of service. And I think if you think long and hard enough about life, I think that's where you always end up.
Yeah, also seeing my son and my tribute to my heritage and how I was able to break some of those ancestral traumas and lineages with what I have done with my son and with myself. This gives me a lot of pride and shows me that this can be done for many people who are carrying, tribalism and a lot of ancestral traumas and misconceptions and limiting beliefs. And this can be changed. And so if I can be an example for people and they can take inspiration out of it and then break some of those chains for themselves, then that's another service for humanity.
I think also just one last thing to mention, that going back to what you said about technology, and I think the time we're living in has allowed authoritarianism to scale immensely. It no longer requires people to enforce it. You can enforce it with algorithms now. Social credit scores are like the hidden hand that controls you, aren't they? They don't really,
Sure.
No one's forcing you to do anything, but you do. But as we can see also, that same technology is giving rise to all the antidotes to all these things.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that. There's Twitter's could end up being the horrible app that controls you, but Nosta's there. Fiat money is destroying you, but Bitcoin's there. And there are what I love about the two sides here that are in this eternal battle is the top-down people. They don't get us. They don't understand us. They don't understand grassroots. They don't understand when things come up from the bottom, and they don't actually know how to deal with it.
And they're not ready for people who are fearless, that are not moved by fear. They can throw almost anything they want at me, I guess at you as well, and fear will not be what will move us. It will be something else. So I don't care being banned, being censored, being ridiculed, being whatever, locked at home. Sometimes I told my dad during COVID, if they take me to jail, just come bail me out. I'm not even afraid of that. Not that I want to go to jail, and not that I want to die. I don't want all that stuff. But if it happens, there's nothing they can throw at me that I cannot take. So no fear. Living your life, not from a place of fear, but from a place of choice, is super powerful. And they don't know what to do with that. Once they don't have that fear grip over us, they're lost.
Efrat, I'm going to have to leave it there. Okay. Leaving it in a no fear zone. Wonderful talking to you again. Thanks for coming by. I definitely got to do this again some point in the future because I love our little chats now. They're becoming sort of
I love it too.
Relatively important.
Yeah, and I also think that.
And so thanks for your words of wisdom, and good luck in your talk.
Thank you.
Put that out to the people on stage, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.